Hello and welcome, I'm Stormo, and today we're taking a look at Radiant Silvergun, my favourite video game, well, not my favourite video game, my favourite shooting game of all time. My second favourite shooting game of all time. Wow. Radiant Silvergun is, how to put this, a brilliant game. It was developed by Treasure, came out in 1998, and it was developed by Treasure, and I'm not even going to pretend I'm good at this game. So I thought, in order to show it off, what I would actually do, in order to show this game off, because it does go on for a little bit, what I'd actually do is I pre-baked a leaderboard. So what I should be able to do, no, that's not how to do this. No, where is it? No, it's here, it is here. Replay, I should have a replay saved. What I'm going to do is run a replay and talk about the game, because I'm not good enough to play this game. To the point where it should be played. So we're going to snuffle that, and we're going to play it, and I'm going to put the controller down and talk about Radiant Silvergun while this vastly better person than me, who we saw at the start there, plays it, and skips all the story scenes, unfortunately. Anyway, so Radiant Silvergun, let's talk about Radiant Silvergun. This is a game that has some really unique features. It's made by Treasure, who also developed Ikaruga, which is probably a far better known game than this. Ikaruga, I guess, can best be described as a minimalist game. It has very little in it. It's, how to say this? Ikaruga has no power-ups, it has no weaponry, it has 5 stages, it has a very, very perfect chaining and boss battling system, and it's overall really good. It's an amazing video game. Radiant Silvergun is, in my opinion, a better game than Ikaruga, and I'm gonna sort of explain why as we go on. Now, first things first, Radiant Silvergun, instead of having 1 weapon, 2 if you count the homing laser in Ikaruga, Radiant Silvergun gives you 3 base weapons that can be combined together to form 7 weapons total. You can see them there all listed down the side of the screen. Yeah, so basically the way it works is that you have 3 base weapons. This is the napalm, that's the Vulcan cannon, and the other one is the green homing beam that he's been shooting out occasionally. Combining them in various ways gives you a homing shot, which is that thing is using here. It gives you a lightning lock-on lightning attack, which I don't know if he's used yet. It's not a very good attack. It gives you that attack where you can fire out the back of your ship as well, which is really cool. And it gives you the Radiant Sword, which is the sword that he's been using a little bit, and should use in a moment, I think, to pop out the pink shots that'll come up soon enough. So that's the lightning. The lightning has the benefit of being able to shoot through obstacles like those blocks there that moved out of the way. And the way everything works in this game is that you need to level up your weapons by using them. There's no power-ups, but you can power up your weapons. You level them up by using them. They do more damage. You can see in the bottom left of the screen there, where it's got Vulcan, homing, and spread. So the 3 base weapons are the ones that level up, and that affects, obviously, the power of all the other weapons. And that's the Radiant Sword there, and you actually saw him get a full charge. There's a little meter in the top right under the score, top left under the score. And that allows you, he's holding onto it at the moment, he hasn't done it yet, but that allows you to fire off the big Radiant Sword, which covers the whole screen. Makes you invulnerable for a moment too, which is really cool. But yeah, the Radiant Sword is a really cool feature, and the way it works is really cool. You can actually just have it out and swing it around and use it. It's kind of an amazing little mechanic, the way the Radiant Sword works. But yeah, obviously he's not using it at this stage. He's just preserving it for whatever he needs it for. Probably up here, actually. This part, yeah, there you go. That's the big sword. And that was what he was preserving it for, get rid of that thing. So the way scoring works in this game is there's... The Xbox 360 version actually introduced a second scoring mode. You can see that little puppy dog there. That puppy dog's worth points. There's a bunch of them hidden on every level. I forget. I think there's a certain number. I think it's like 5 or 6 on every level, maybe? I can't remember off the top of my head. But there is a certain number hidden in every level. Also, watch out for that guy. There's another dog there. But in general, scoring is a chaining system like Ikaruga. And in fact, with this particular replay we're watching at the moment, it's very like Ikaruga because it is built on Ikaruga's chaining system. The main difference between Radiant Silvergun and Ikaruga's chaining system is that Radiant Silvergun's chaining system is based on using 3 different colours. There's red, yellow, and blue. Ikaruga just uses the 2, black and white. In the original version of Radiant Silvergun, or in fact you can play it in this version as well, if you set it to the normal mode. In the original version of Radiant Silvergun, the chaining system is based on a colour and you can't switch colours. So if you start chaining blue enemies in a level, the only way to start chaining red enemies is to break that chain. Ikaruga mode lets you chain 3 enemies of a colour and then switch colours, which is why it's actually a better way to play the game, I think. One thing I want to talk about just briefly too, with this particular boss that we're fighting now, the boss's name was Gallop, and it's actually, you might have thought its attacks look kind of familiar. Yeah, it's based on the R9 ship from the R-Type games. This game actually has a lot of references to other shooting games and other games that Treasure were into at the time it was about. The game originally came out in 1998, I think, on Sega's STV Titan arcade hardware and on the Sega Saturn. And this is of course what we're watching here is of course the Xbox 360 re-release from 2011, I think it came out in the 360. Yeah, and I was so happy when this came out in the 360 because I gotta tell you guys, I own this game on Sega Saturn, and if there's one thing most people know about Radiant Silvergun, as we watch this boss, I love this boss actually, it's a really cool design. If there's one thing most people know about Radiant Silvergun, it's that it's worth a lot of money on eBay. Back in the early 2000s, and I think even today you still pay a decent amount for an original Saturn copy of this, but back in the early 2000s it was worth about $200 US dollars on eBay, and I was lucky enough actually to have a friend go to Japan and buy me a copy, a sealed copy even, which I unsealed. I've played it many times over the years because I don't like holding on to games if I'm not going to play them. But yeah, I did have a copy of this game on the Saturn long before it came out on Xbox Live. And yeah, it's an amazing game. Visually, I think it's one of the Saturn's best games, and I think the visuals, they cleaned them up here for the 360, and you can see some really amazing effects. That boss in particular is really amazing the way it rotates around. This sequence here where you're climbing up this wall is really cool as well. You're actually flying up. So the game does have a fairly involved story. Most of it's being skipped by this replay, but there are sections of the game where the characters, the pilot characters of the 3 ships, sorry, it's a 2-player game, but there are 3 Silvergun ships. The pilot characters will cut in and talk about different things and do different stuff. But basically what happened was they found this object lying in the earth called Stonelight, big diamond-shaped thing. If you've ever played all the way through Ikaruga, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's the final part of Ikaruga where you have to fly and not shoot that boss. Yeah, so basically they discover this thing, and then it comes to life and destroys the Earth. Literally, basically wipes out everything on planet Earth. I love this part where you just climb this huge wall and fighting this boss here. There you go. That's this is some plot happening right now. So yeah, like I said, some of the plot sequences get avoided, but yeah. The first guy that's talking there was Guy, who is the hot-headed pilot, as opposed to his co-pilots, who are a little bit more level-headed. And the other 2 co-pilots, not Guy, but the other 2 are actually the 1-player and 2-player pilots as well. So you're actually playing a character in this game. So it is a lot more of a role-playing game than you might have first thought. Which is cool. One thing to note with the when you're using the Radiant Sword, the full Radiant Sword super attack, I think it's actually called the Hyper Sword, might be the name of that attack. But when you're using that, you are actually completely invincible while it's active. So right there, he can fly all the way through all those attacks without taking damage because, well, without dying. You don't get damage in this game, you die. Without taking any hits whatsoever. because he's able to use the Radiant Sword like that by absorbing the pink bullets, which is good. And yeah, so one other... so yeah, you've got the pilots and the main story, and like I say, what happens is they discover an object called the Stone-like. They also discover a robot head that's similar to the robot that's on the ship where they're testing these experimental fighters, the Silverguns, out. So, and again, unfortunately a whole bunch of story got skipped there, but this is stage 2, which comes after stage 3 in this game because it's actually set before it in time. This is the story of what happened the night the world ended. So basically the start of stage 1, you're returning to Earth after a year because you're running low on supplies and you need to know what's going on. And then the I've forgotten his name, but the captain guy of the Tetra, which is the ship that you're on, the ship that the Silverguns are based on, reminisces about what happened that night, and that's what this is. You can see up there the big base. That's actually the main base. That was where it all started to go wrong. Also, you get this awesome in the background of the moon attack. Looks great. Yeah, they sort of missed the stage transition there, but that's fine. It's just, like I say, it's just a replay I downloaded so that I could have a good show off of this game without having to struggle through it myself, because I'm really not good enough at it. And I'll just bump the controller so that I'll bump the controller so that the Xbox One screensaver doesn't kick in there. But yeah, this boss is called Kotetsu, and I'm guessing that there is the Batman reference at the start of this fight is quite intentional, with the bat-shaped boss flying up against the moon like that. Nothing in this game is done unintentionally, really. One other thing to note with this game too is it does have a magnificent soundtrack. Hitoshi Sakimoto, who's also done music for things like Final Fantasy Tactics, Gradius 5, what else has he done music for? God, it's lots of really cool games. Those are probably the two that I remember off the top of my head most. But he did the music for this game as well. I think it's got a great soundtrack. The music for the next stage, which will be stage 4, is really good. One other thing to note with this game too is before every boss there's like a warning screen that comes up that gives you advice, I guess, on how to beat the boss. And some of the advice is kind of funny, some of it's not. Hey, remember that part from Ikaruga, stage 3? Yeah. Where you've got to dodge through those little platforms. He goes up this side. You're probably also noticing, seeing as we've gotten to that point, you've noticed... Oh, he died. Oh. Probably also noticing, seeing as we've got to a point where it's a bit more obvious, the weapon power-ups, when you see the Vulcan cannon now, it looks a lot stronger than it did before. Which is cool. So yeah, there are obvious visual improvements as the weapons power up as well. The Vulcan cannon, for example, gets wider. That lightning's more intense now that it's a bit more powered up. And so everything sort of works out really well that way, I think, too. And this boss, I think this boss was called Golets. And it's actually a boss in 2 parts. So you got that part, and then you got to fight the rest of it. Now that you've beaten that part, you fly up out of that trench, and you got to fight the other part of Golets, which is this part. So 2 bosses for the price of 1 here. I think I mentioned before, in the story mode, Saturn mode of the game, there are 24 bosses total. The arcade mode is a little bit different. It actually dramatically shortens the game. Basically, it cuts an entire stage out, and the cool part of that is you actually get to choose which stage it cuts out. After you beat stage 3 in arcade mode, you get the choice of going to stage 2, which is this stage, or stage 4, which will come after this stage in the Saturn mode. You get the option of which stage you skip in that mode. The other big difference between arcade mode and this mode is that arcade modes, I think stage 5 and 6 are both quite a bit shorter in arcade mode than they are in Saturn mode. They have more bosses in Saturn mode, and Stage 6 is particularly extended. In arcade mode, Stage 6 is literally just the final boss fight, whereas in Saturn mode, there's a whole section that comes before the final boss. In fact, I think there's 2 or 3 other bosses in that stage. I forget exactly how many, but yeah. I really like this boss, actually. I like most of the bosses in this game. So this isn't a boss yet, but there's this whole sequence where you've got where you're trapped inside this cage. You can go out of it. You're not trapped. I suppose trapped inside is a bit too harsh. You're not trapped so much as you've got to sort of work around those barriers, and there are ways to do it. And they move in and out of the plane you're on when you're shooting the game. So there's a bit of sort of dimensionality to it, I guess. So now they're in the plane and you've got to avoid them. I think, yeah, that little gap there is what he snuck through before to get in and out. Obviously you can do that as well. And you can use your Radiant Swords to avoid it as well. But you can see there he's avoiding it just so he doesn't get hit. And he gets the secret dog. And yeah, warning, no refuge. Yeah, Nasu. A lot of the boss names are puns. Often in Japanese. Some are multilingual. So yeah, there's a couple of kind of odd choices for boss names that are often weird ways of saying Japanese things. But yeah, and then each boss has 3 little tips that you can get to find out how much it is. I love the effect with the wireframe as you blow up those parts of the boss. So all the back end of the boss is blown up, so there's just the wireframe holding it together there. It's really cool. And listen to this music, guys. Seriously, I'm just gonna shut up and let the music play for a moment. In fact, something with regards to the music, actually, is that little piece there, that melody that he uses, that's very much a leitmotif in this game. I love because this game is told in the past, there's all these sort of computer design or computer overlay elements on it. This is a really cool boss. You end up actually trapped. Oh, he's actually managed to get outside. You actually end up for part of this boss trapped inside it. You have to avoid balls and stuff. Not this part. This first part you're not trapped inside, but later on you get where. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's this boss. Yeah, it is. And you got all these balls going around. Wait, no, this boss is completely different how I remember it. Normally you're... Or maybe it's the next phase of this boss. I can't remember now. Been a little while. Yeah, I think it's about to start bleeding. And he's decided to stay outside of the boss. Okay. So yeah, you can get trapped inside this part of the boss, and obviously you're going to have to do a lot of dodging, but it turns out you can just do this. I didn't know. I'd never seen a replay or any video that does this with this part of the boss. So that's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know it was possible to do that. Oh, there you go. I've learned something fascinating about Radiant Silvergun. Unlike Ikaruga, I don't believe it's more lucrative for most bosses to time them out to get a higher score in Radiant Silvergun. It might be, but I think the boss bonuses are worth more than just shooting the boss, because you don't get... Well, you do get points for hitting things, but they never get big enough that it's worth holding the boss on screen for as long as possible to get as many points as possible. And there you can see the sort of digital overlay effect. That'll actually build up more as we go through the later part of the stage. I think we're coming up to it soon. The final boss for this stage has a really cool effect. I won't spoil. If you know what it is, you know what it is, and if you don't, you don't. We'll see. Yep, another one of those dogs. Look at this. I should probably point out too, a lot of people claim that this is a bullet hell game. This is not a bullet hell game. I'm just gonna like pop that myth because it bothers me a little bit. Like, as someone who is a big fan of bullet hell shooters, like my favorite, I mentioned before, this is my second favorite shooter. My favorite is probably Dodonpachi Daioju, which I'm one day going to make a video about. But yeah, this is not a bullet hell shooter, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One of which is that while it does get a lot of bullets on screen, there are certainly parts that can be confused with bullet hell. Okay, so this is the part I was talking about before too. Make time, decide weapons, look over lines. Yeah, the lines will become important. I'll just let this play out. Yeah, here we go. So they do this level like this because it's replaying a simulation of the fight, an analysis of the fight. They're analysing it for future reference. So it goes all digital like this. I really love this. It looks great. And it looks really good on the 360 where you can anti-alias the lines to make it look really clean and nice. Actually, it looks fantastic here. On the Saturn, it's a bit, I guess, a bit rougher the way it looks. But yeah, look, you can see the bullets coming here, and yeah, that does look very bullet hellish, but this game is, for a start, it's not really as fast-paced as a bullet hell game. There's a lot more objects and hazards to avoid. Like, bullet hell games, generally the only objects in them are the enemy ships and the bullets. The only thing you need to dodge are enemy ships and bullets. In this game, there's a lot of environmental objects that you've got to dodge around as well. The enemies tend to be a lot more... well, the bosses particularly tend to be a lot more... How to say... Oop, he died. I just realised he's doing this with the 9 lives setting too, as well. But the bosses tend to be a lot more involved than you generally get in a bullet hell shooter. Like, compare this boss to a cave boss. You would never see these kind of attack patterns, this sort of lengthy multi-stage battle in a cave boss. Cave bosses can be long, and they usually have 2 or 3 phases. But they're never as complex as this. And that's true of most bullet hell shooters like Toho. I suppose Toho, in a way, is a little bit closer to this in terms of having very complex multi-stage bosses, but at the same time, gotta stop that from happening. Gotta bump the controller every, like, 2 or 3 minutes. At the same time, it's not as... just trying to think of the right words. It's not as involved as what you see here, I guess. Okay, and again, part of the story was skipped there. Anyway, this is stage 4. Basically, what would have happened at the end of there, you would have seen the destruction of... Or you would have seen the stone like explode and destroy the world. Hey, remember that part near the end of stage 1 in Ikaruga where you have to do this to chain? You have to do these really precise shots to get the chains? Oh yeah, all the red blocks here are chain too, which is cool. And there's precisely enough for you to get perfect 3 chains all the way through, because of course there is. So after that happened, after stage 2 ends and you get to stage 4, this is back in the present day. This basically takes on after stage 3. Okay, so just to explain what happened there, he'd blown up 2 of the blue bricks on the previous section, and then waited for that blue enemy to come down so he could keep the chain. I don't know if this game does the thing that Ikaruga does, where it prioritizes when you're using like the Radiant swords. Sorry, not the Radiant sword, the Hyper sword. When you're using the Hyper sword in Ikaruga, in this game, whether it prioritizes enemies to maintain a chain or just destroys enemies as soon as they're available. I don't know if that happens. Also, that section is, again, very reminiscent of the section in Ikaruga. Oh, listen to this piece of music. I'm going to shut up and let this music play because I love this piece. So interestingly, that boss actually, there's a boss in, was it the original Dodonpachi that has a similar attack to that missile attack at the end of that as well. And that game came out before this, and I wonder again if that's actually referencing that. I don't know if it is. It wouldn't surprise me. Notice how you have to shoot these things to keep them together so that they don't expand and you have to dodge all those electric zappy sections. And yeah, you got to do that to create the gap that you need to get through there. And to get through there. Now, you could use the Radiant Sword to get around that block there if you wanted to. But you don't have to, I guess, is the best way to say that. You don't have to at all. One other thing with this game, I reckon, and I've watched a lot of videos of really good players playing it over the years, and obviously I've played it myself a bit too. And one thing I noticed with this game, especially more so than Ikaruga, is that there is a lot of variety in the way people play the game. Now, obviously, what we're watching here is Ikaruga mode, so it's not the original mode of the game, so the strategies will be a bit different, the chaining strategies will be quite a bit different. But in general, even in the original mode, I always noticed there was quite a lot of variety in how different players approach different parts of the game. This is it's not like Ikaruga, where Ikaruga, to me, always feels, and there's always a joke about Ikaruga being more a puzzle game than a shooting game. But I think that's less so in this game. It's not as rigid in terms of having to figure things out as Ikaruga is. Now, I didn't know that there was a perfectly safe spot to sit here for this part of this section of the game. I think it's a boss. Yeah, it's a boss. And again, there's a boss in Ikaruga that mirrors this boss. Not the third, sorry, not a boss. Well, I suppose it's a mid-boss. Is it the third stage? The one where the fourth stage where you're fighting the giant satellite. And there's a section in that's, to me, reminds me of this, actually, where you've got a lot of guns. Actually, now I think about it, the final boss in Ikaruga is similar to, there's a section of the final boss that's similar to this as well. But yeah, I had no idea that there was a safe space there. I don't think I've ever seen a video where that happens. Maybe that only happens on the Xbox 360 version. Or maybe it's been a long time and I'm not remembering it well. I don't know. But yeah, in this part you get stuck in the green section. I don't believe you can break out of it at all. So you basically have to do it this way. I think Ikaruga is a memorization heavy game. I mean, most shooters are ultimately memorization games. Once you know the sequence and the attack patterns in a level, it essentially just becomes a case of repeating your inputs every time you play. But I think that in this case, you at least have a lot more freedom in terms of how you learn the stages, how you go through them, and what you get out of it as an overall theme. But that said, I think that that doesn't necessarily make Ikaruga a bad game either, being a lot more rigidly structured. And I think in the case of both games too, that it's not so much about how they're played as sort of what they convey on screen that's really the point of them. Like Ikaruga has this very atmospheric visual style to it. It's always got these reds and blues to complement the black and white theming. And the music in this game is the same as well. Sakamoto didn't work on Ikaruga. He didn't work on Ikaruga, but that game also has this very sort of music, very moody, very atmospheric orchestral soundtrack. Although in Ikaruga's case, it's all done on synthesizers. That said, actually, all the music in this game is also all done on synthesizers, but there is a fully arranged orchestral soundtrack for this game that might be in the Xbox 360 edition. I can't remember if it is or not off the top of my head. It's certainly not the version we're listening to at the moment. But yeah, and both games actually tell quite tragic stories too. Ikaruga, of course, quite famous because you actually die at the end of it. Spoiler alert, sorry. But yeah, the final part of Ikaruga, you have to essentially destroy yourself to defeat the the stone-like at the end of the game. This game, no, this game's a bit happier than that. The ending is a little bit less depressing. I'm not sure we're going to get to see the ending with this replay. I think the replay will just end, so we won't get to see the ending animation. But that's fine. That's fine. The ending's great. The ending's worth it. Yeah, we'll press forward. This is going to be a slightly longer video. Obviously, you can see the time up there, so that's about how long we're going to go for. Because I am going to go through the whole game with this. Get this far. I'm not going to leave it. We've got this far. You just have to forgive me if I occasionally stop for coffee. That's how it works, really. Like I say, I mean, I love this game. I could talk about it for that long. And look at this boss, Dan564. I've forgotten exactly what it was, but 564 is a reference to the way it works. It's Gorokushi is 564 in Japanese. And that describes what it's meant to be. It's the Japanese word for whatever it is. So again, it's one of these things where they've used these kind of sort of weird choices to convey a meaning, basically almost using English as kanji in a lot of weird ways, actually, there, which is kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, so what we're seeing here is the rolling boss, actually. What will happen after a certain point is he'll jump up the screen and start rolling around between those sort of pillars on each side. I think that's this boss that does that. Oh, and he shoots those. And they get narrower and narrower. Oops! Got a little bit close there. Can't remember if you get extends in the Saturn version either. I think you do. Yeah, the 10-pin bowling. That's right. I remember that now. Knocks over the pillars. And then starts throwing his bombs out. And the missiles and everything. Ultimately, I think, too, I was talking about this game not being a bullet hell shooter. Because not because it doesn't have less complex patterns, but just because it's slower and it doesn't match a lot of the design ideas that bullet hell games have sort of settled on over the years. And I think I think you can see a good example of how this isn't a bullet hell shooter here. There's not a lot of actual bullets. There's a lot going on here. Certainly a lot to dodge. And this game does have that bullet hell shooter trope of the ship's hitbox actually being quite a lot smaller than the sprite. It's a small section, I think in the middle. If you look in the middle towards the back of the ship, there's not the light blue dot at the very front of the ship, but I believe it's the light blue dot just in front of that sort of main jet at the back of the ship, I believe is where the hitbox is. Or at least it's in that center section anyway. Basically, the two wings aren't remotely destructible, which is good. So it does do that, and it kind of needs to, because there are very hectic sections. Like I said, it may not be a bullet hell shooter, but it has a lot of bullet hell, a lot of sections that are reminiscent of bullet hell shooters. It even has these bright pink bullets that, of course, look very much like the bright pink bullets you get in a cave game like Dodonpachi or something like that. So it does have its references and moments. Penta! Okay, so, yeah, I was hoping we'd get this. So, the Penta... So I mentioned before that the Silverguns were launched from a ship called Tetra. But they weren't the only ship testing the Silverguns. There was also the Penta. But the Penta somehow got caught up in the whole thing with the Stone-like and has been brought back. I'm not sure how it... I don't know if it's ever really explicitly explained how the Stone-like... the Stone-like seems to just rematerialize enemies out of everywhere. And you'll actually see later on there's a sequence where that becomes important. Look at that Saturn sky. It's almost Super Nintendo Mode 7-ish, that part, isn't it? With all the scrolling, the scaling and rotating around at the bottom there. And the Penta was, of course, testing its own Silvergun, so you have to put up with the fact that it has Silverguns that it will use to shoot you, and of course, they have their own weapons. But yeah, whatever happened, the Penta was somehow taken over and reanimated by the Stonelag. So you get this sequence here where you've got to fight basically yourself. It's almost a mirror match in a lot of ways. If that fight had gone on a bit longer, you would have actually seen that all the Silverguns actually have the same attacks you have. So you saw the Vulcan cannon there. They also do have the other 3 weapons as well if you let the fight go on long enough to see them. Which obviously we didn't, and that's fine. If you destroy that thing in the middle, you can see the red thing in the middle, it's holding together, yeah, I'm not going to do it. If you destroy those red things in the middle, they'll actually, yeah, die and cause those blocks to collapse. And again, talking about referencing things, this part reminds you a little of the spider robot in Gradius. These 2 big triangle things. For whatever reason, I think of that spider bot in the Gradius games. And of course the equivalent in Parodius, the dancing girl, in that game as well. Parodius is a game I should make videos about at some point. I love the Parodius games. And they're really interesting too. They're really fun games. Probably the best example of that long-forgotten genre of parody shooters that we don't really have many of these days. Don't have many shooters these days, I guess, but certainly parody shooters. I shouldn't say we don't have many shooters. You're on Steam, there's a lot of people making bullet hell shooters on Steam, or making shooters in general. Yeah, this is very much like that Gradius robot, this part. So I think it's destructible. I can't remember off the top of my head if that thing is destructible. I think. Oh no, that's right. You fight it. I remember now. It shoots a bunch of stuff at you and you fight it. What's really amazing about that was that he maintained his chain all the way through it. And I don't know if you guys saw, but there were blue ships mixed in with all the red ships then. So that was some fairly impressive chaining going on there. That's a bullet hell pattern if ever I saw one. Look at this chasm in the background there. CA2 EKZO. I also really love that Beatitude for Gains phrase that this game has. This is the wrong stage. But yeah, I really love that Beatitude for Gains phrase that comes before every boss. I'm not entirely sure what it is about it that I've always liked. It's one of those weird Englishy phrases where someone who's not a native English speaker has created this sort of turn of phrase that conveys a particular meaning in a really sort of unique and actually kind of efficient way. And I really like that. I like that phrase. In fact, if it wasn't for the weird censor on it, it would be my Xbox Live motto. But apparently can't have the word attitude in an Xbox Live motto because it contains the word tit. So, yeah. I discovered that the hard way. I think this boss may not be in the arcade version as well. Or maybe it is. I think it might even be as far back as here though that we start seeing bosses. No, I think this boss is in the arcade version. I probably should mention, I don't know if I did mention this before, being on the Xbox 360, this version, we are using the updated graphical, the updated graphics of it, which aren't, I thought I tapped that a little while ago, which aren't a huge overhaul. It's not like Ikaruga HD, which actually looks quite significantly better than Dreamcast Ikaruga. This, aside from some smoothing and maybe some upscaling, it doesn't look dramatically different to the Saturn version. Like, all the objects still look fairly blocky and pixelated and stuff like that. but it doesn't have the sort of rough edges that the Saturn version has, I guess. So that's something. So I mean, it definitely looks nicer, but it's not quite the gigantic visual overhaul that Ikaruga got, or a lot of other HD remasters that come out these days got as well. And that would be the end of that stage, and we get to see, okay, we missed it, we get to see stage 5, which is Victim. The end of stage 4, you basically make it to the headquarters, the stone like appears, and that's kind of how this stage starts. And this stage, I think, is mostly involving this massive battleship that gets summoned out of the air. And you get some cool camera angles here too. And some missiles. There's basically these two battleships that you fight in this stage. Watching this replay has actually taught me that there's a lot of safe spots in Radiant Silvergun I didn't know about. So that's cool. That's definitely cool. This reminds me, and again, I've been pointing this out, I think, basically every time it happens. Again, there's a section of Ikaruga that this reminds me of, which is the start of Stage 2, with all the planes flying around in Ikaruga. For whatever reason, all those ships remind me a little bit of that section of that game. But I suppose if there's a stage in Ikaruga that's like this, it's Stage 4, where again you're fighting a very large ship in sections that makes up the whole stage as well. Got to get that sword damage in. As I mentioned before, the sword is actually the most powerful weapon in the game. And again, you can see too, as the weapons are powered up, the Vulcan cannon is now basically 5 wide. It's not as powerful as it'll get. Level 33 is the maximum. But it's about as wide as it'll get now, is that 5 wide attack. One other thing I'm noticing, actually, just because we're playing this on the Xbox One, of course, and it's actually running pretty much perfectly. As far as I can tell, there isn't any obvious issues with the compatibility of it. It seems to be running absolutely perfectly, which is really nice. So if you do want to play this game, it is... I think this week it became available as an Xbox 360 backwards compatibility title on the Xbox One. So if you bought it on 360 all those years ago, you should be able to download it and play it. If you didn't buy it, you should be able to buy it now. I believe it's still available on Xbox Live, so I'd recommend checking it out for sure. So again, just I apologise also for the flashing effects here. There's quite a lot of them. There was a warning when the game started up about flashing effects, actually. I should have mentioned that, but yeah, there's quite a lot of them there. Because it's quite a big thing that it's shooting, I guess. So I believe you blow that apart, and it I can't remember if you have to or not blow that apart though. Ooh, that was odd. Vibrated very, very suddenly. I was looking at the side as it went and did that, and it vibrated. And now you get this rotation effect. So you just saw there, I think I mentioned this before, and I don't think this is really shown off very well. You can actually hold the sword out stationary, and enemies can collide with it, and it'll damage them quite a bit. But you can actually use the sword in a lot of really creative ways. Many years ago, you can probably find them on YouTube. I haven't looked for years and years, but many years ago there was a series of videos done by, I think it was a Japanese player. I think it was the same guy, VTF Inno, that did the Ikaruga double play videos, where he played 2-player Ikaruga with himself on an arcade machine. But I believe he did a video, it might have been him, might have been someone else, I can't remember, of this game where he went through the whole game using nothing but the Radiant Sword. That was the only weapon he used for the whole game, and it was called Radiant Silvergun Sword Play. You might be able to find it searching those terms on YouTube. If you do, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's the arcade version of the game, not this version, but it's worth watching because it's kind of amazing just to see how well he does with that limitation. I don't know for sure, but I imagine there's been a few other attempts at swordplay for this game as well. Especially since the Xbox Live release, it'd surprise me if nobody else had attempted to recreate that kind of thing. Or maybe there's even an achievement for it. I don't think so, but maybe. But yeah, the Radiant Silvergun swordplay is definitely worth watching. The only downside, like I say, is that it was an arcade version of the game. In fact, it was played on an arcade version of the game, so the Saturn mode wasn't even an option for that particular thing. But yeah, in the arcade, when this game did come out in the arcade, and it came out, I think it was released simultaneously on the Saturn and the arcade. It was never an arcade first game, I don't think. The arcade version was a 3-button game, so you'd have to use the buttons in different combinations to get all the weapons available to you. Whereas on the Saturn, the buttons are assigned, the weapons are assigned to each of the 6 face buttons, and the sword is the shoulder buttons on the Saturn version. So, which I have to admit feels a lot cleaner than the way it's set up on this game. But that said, I wonder if the setup for this game is to the weapons that are optimal for players to use. So the combination weapons that players rely on more heavily are available more easily, because in some cases, like in fact you've seen it in this Let's Play, you use a lot of the combination weapons a lot more than you use the homing, and the homing is one of the base weapons, but it's just very weak. Sure, it locks onto enemies and it homes in, but it's very weak, doesn't do a lot of damage, and generally isn't worth using over the homing variants that it has, like the lock-on laser, and I think the lightning is the other one that the homing uses. So it's almost not worth using outside of that to get those powers. I think there's some really amazing level design going on here. This ship, the various challenges it throws up at you are really clever. I'd forgotten how good this sequence actually is, and how intense it feels too. Like the reds, you got this really intense music happening again in the background, and again that leitmotif coming in as well. You can hear it playing there. And the cubes. Well, they're not cubes, are they? They're prisms of some sort. Very minty green. So the napalm has the interesting thing of the spread of that explosion is quite a lot, and you can see here he's using it so he can stay in a safe position while still damaging, and he's using the sword in tandem with it too to get extra damage on it. Just to bring it down. Enemy damage in this game is generally a fair bit higher than it is in Ikaruga. Like, most enemies have a lot more health. Most boss enemies have a lot more health, so they take a bit longer to kill. But as I said before, one thing I'm noticing with this game, there's a lot of safe space. Oh, you have to forgive me, I actually yawned. Sorry about that. There's a lot of safe spaces all through this game, which I didn't really notice until I watched this replay. But yeah, this is the 5th and technically the 3rd last stage, but the very final stage is quite a bit shorter. He died again. I have to wonder how many lives he's planning to use on the final boss, because the final boss is by far the hardest boss in this game. Well, I guess we'll find out soon enough. Oh, okay. I'll let this play out, but I'm going to have to explain something that happened afterwards. Well, in fact, no, I'll just explain. So, what happens at the end of Stage 5 is actually quite tragic, and very, very sad. Basically, he's shooting in time with the music. Encountered W, who, yeah, that thing. So, the Stonelight materializes in another battleship that they have to fight, but Guy decides, well, look, we fought all the other ones, I stuffed this, I'm just going to take it on myself. Flies into it, sacrifices himself, blows up the ship, dies. It's quite sad. Actually, and it's pretty dramatic, and I'm kind of annoyed we miss it. But as I said, if you want to play the story, buy the game. That's all I can say to you there. But yeah, Guy dies at that point. Kind of like another character very similar to him who's also named Guy in a certain anime that I'm not going to name just in case I spoil Martian's success in Nadesico for you. But anyway, after that, these two decide to continue on, and you enter into this stage here. Now, the interesting thing with this is that in the arcade version, this stage is only the final boss. So none of this part of it actually happens. Yeah, here we're getting a lot more of the stage than you would if you're playing the arcade mode. Oh, that happened again. Keep forgetting to press the button. We're nearly done with the game. We're getting there. You can see the cool distortion effects on the stars in the background, that heavily bitmapped photo of planet Earth there. Look, it was the Saturn and PlayStation era, okay? They didn't have the graphical prowess to make their own planet Earth. Although, interestingly, Treasure would go on to make a Nintendo 64 game in which the final boss was, in fact, planet Earth. Which is, of course, Sin and Punishment, Success to the Earth. So, it's a little bit... It's a bit less Englishy in this version than it is in the Saturn version. Oh, and yeah, Space Whale. I was waiting for the Space Whale shot. Well, it's more a space crocodile? No. Ooh, another life lost. This isn't all clear, so... Notice that this enemy has its own hyper sword. Actually seems to have its own lightning attack too, that's interesting. This is actually one of my favourite boss designs in the game, this one. I think it looks really cool. And the way it's made up and the way it works, it is one of the better bosses, and again, it's one you don't see in regular, in the arcade mode. So they've cleaned up the English of what the Stone-like is saying there, which is kind of a shame because it actually sounded really cool in the original Japanese. But, oh well. Hey, it's the turtle boss. I think we just go through signs of the Chinese zodiac at this point for bosses. That's not true. That's not true. This is the only one. But again, it is a cool boss design. Most of the boss designs in this game are pretty cool. But this one I like. I like the previous one. Varus looks really cool. This looks really cool. The final boss looks freaking amazing. So yeah, if you've never seen the final boss of Radiant Silvergun, brace yourself for actually one of the coolest final bosses in a video game. At least in a video game of this era. Because it is a pretty cool final boss. And no, it's not the Stone-like. Although, actually, technically, look, without giving too much away, the Stone-like is kind of the last thing you have to deal with in the game. But it's... Calling it a boss? Yeah, not so much. Oh no, it's getting away. Oh no, it's not. It's reorienting itself. Sometimes I amuse myself by imagining what a modern remake of this game using an updated engine and everything else would look like, and you just rebuilt the whole game from the ground up with modern graphics, and I think it would look pretty good. It would look pretty amazing. I think this game's got a lot going for it that could be reimagined really well. I'd probably use Ikaruga scoring though. Otrigen, which is an eagle. Also, when the final boss does appear, I want you to pay attention to the tips, the helpful advice the game gives you to beat it, because it's quite funny. Again, though, this boss looks really cool. Like the design is really cool, the spiky wings and everything, and the attacks are cool. The shooty, spiky lasers. It occurs to me actually a little bit that these bosses sort of train you for some of the attacks the final boss has. In some ways. Not in every way. Yes, because we couldn't have it without the Phoenix myth, of course. This is not a bullet hell game. I just want to remind you that this is not a bullet hell game. No, it looks alright. It's coming up alright. Final boss. As I said, pay attention to the advice the game gives you here. Which you couldn't actually see because it was too white. Wow. Never had that happen before. So I'll say what it would have said there. So it said, encounter the assailant, Ziga, Beatitude for gains, 1, be praying, 2, be praying, 3, be praying. Basically, the advice it gives you is, you're stuffed. You've got no chance. Also, this boss has a lot of cool visual rotation effects and all sorts of cool stuff going on. Like I say, it's a really cool boss. And you get this awesome piece of music in the background of it too. This choral version of the main theme of the game. There it is, the Stone Lake. So, the diamonds, the diamond attack, yes. So Ziga is kind of, I guess, the embodiment of the anger of the Stone Lake. The Stone Lake's goal is essentially to, every so often, just wipe out all life on the planet and start it all over again. So there's a whole thing about the cycle of eternal recurrence and all this kind of stuff happening in the game. And that's kind of what the Stone Lake shtick is. And we that's the end of the final boss. Except for this final little part that happens. Like I said, I don't believe we're going to get the ending. We're just going to get stage 1. If you're wondering where stage 1 happens in this game, this is it. This is stage 1 now. So stage 1 actually takes place in the past, and like the final part of Ikaruga, after you beat the final boss in that game, you basically just have to survive 60 seconds without dying. Apparently the vocals in the background and the whole thing in the background of the stage is meant to represent the conflict between game developers, game publishers, and game players in Japan. So the whole game, I guess, is a statement on the state of the Japanese video game industry in 1998, which is interesting. Oops. This isn't all clear. Oh, there's only 10 seconds to go. I'm sure it'll be easy. And again, you get the leitmotif. There we go. Now, I'm pretty sure we're not going to get to see the ending cutscene here, which is a bit of a shame because it is kind of cool. But that is Radiant Silvergun. As I said, it's one of my favorite video games. Yeah, we didn't get to see it. It is one of my favorite video games. The ending basically is the two pilots end up being reincarnated by Creator, and it explains why Creator was there at the beginning. And I'll just skip out of that. But yeah, that's Radiant Silvergun. I'm glad you sort of bore with me through all that. Like I said, I chose to do a replay because otherwise I couldn't show the whole game off in a single episode like I would have wanted to do, because it's just stop doing that. I wouldn't have been able to show the whole game off in the way I would have wanted to otherwise, basically, because I just don't have the skill to get through it, and there's no way of credit feeding through this game, unlike a lot of other shooters I've got. Radiant Silvergun, this version of it, you actually have to play it to unlock more and more credits until you can get through it using credits if you're going to do it that way. And of course, if you don't want a credit feed, get good at the game, because that's what you got to do. But yeah, overall, yeah, that's Radiant Silvergun. It's, like I say, it's one of my favorite video games. I've been wanting to make a video about this game for years and years and years. And I'm really happy I've finally had the opportunity to do it right now. And I hope you enjoyed it. I know it went on for a bit, about an hour's worth of video, I think, maybe. But I think it's worth it. I think it's a really good game, and I think you should all definitely go check it out. Either if you're willing to really put the cash in, buy the Saturn version. Otherwise, pick it up on Xbox Live. It's far cheaper to do it that way. That was the intro movie. I was going to let the intro movie run, but oh well. It's all done now. So that's Radiant Silvergun. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.